I never thought I would be here filming this kind of video today for you, but need to keep you up to date on what's going on and what's been going on and where I have been the last few weeks without posting. I believe the last video you saw was my first trimester symptoms, and I was sharing everything in depth so far that had gone on with my pregnancy, and I'm going to continue that today. So starting around 14 weeks, I had a little bit of a scare. I went to the bathroom one morning. It kind of felt like I peed myself, and I ran into the bathroom and I saw a lot of blood. I instantly just broke down crying because if you had watched my first trimester video, 3 weeks prior, I had on and off been spotting, and I had gone into the doctor and they had said that everything was good and it was just related to my cervix and would just like, it was never heavy, it was just light spot. Well, this felt different. This felt like an actual heavy bleed. My husband was super gracious, and that day took the kids with him into church where he works and left me at home to be able to call my doctor and have some space, because I was really not in the mental space. I was like, 3 weeks ago I had just dealt with spotting. I feel like I keep having these moments of being scared that I'm losing the baby. And so around that 14-week mark, I spent all morning on and off the phone with my doctor. I spent about 2.5 to 3 hours literally just sitting there waiting for calls back, because it was like calling and then they had to like tell someone else and I had to wait for them to call me back, and then it was calling to see if they whatever, and I could finally get in early afternoon to an ultrasound. And I got in and I left joyous and happy and praising the Lord because the baby was perfectly fine. They found a like 2.5 centimeter hemorrhage behind my placenta, really near to my cervix. So they said basically sometimes like hemorrhages can come and they go. They want them gone by around that 20-week mark. And they were like, most of the time they just dissipate fully on their own. But they said some women don't actually cramp, bleed anything because the hemorrhage is far enough away from their cervix, but yours is right by your cervix. So that's probably why you are seeing actual bleeding. But we got, you know, an additional ultrasound, because normally you don't have an ultrasound at 14 weeks, left being like, okay, it is okay that I am bleeding. And it was okay that I was bleeding. I had about 5 days of heavy bleeding. And then after that, the hemorrhage was supposedly like fully out. And I just went back to the regular light spotting after a day or two that I'd been dealing with at that point for 3 weeks on and off. Then kept having that happening and went in at 16 weeks. I explained that I was still kind of having some light spotting, but she explained, you know, the 5 days of heavy bleeding that I had was most likely my hemorrhage fully coming out, and that is normal. And the light spotting is probably not due to my cervix. And so I didn't have an ultrasound at 16 weeks. It was just a regular like OBGYN checkup, and found the baby's heart rate. It was in the 150s. It was great. It was perfect. Everything was good. The following week, I was 17 weeks along, and we had a church Christmas party for our youth group. I was on the stage leading games, wearing my Christmas sweater, all of the things. That night, I remember telling my husband that I kind of just had like a weird joint pain. I'm not going to show you because it's in kind of a weird spot, but like between my like pelvis and my like hip and like my thigh, like in that like crevice, I was like, it's just kind of achy, but like, you're pregnant, things are growing, things are stretching, it's fine. Like it wasn't anything that was painful. I was just kind of like, it's just kind of annoying. And then went to sleep that night. And around 1:30 a.m. I woke up and had the most intense back pain and hip pain that I think I've ever experienced. I was almost to the point of tears. I thought, I can't sleep. I'm so uncomfortable. I got up a couple times just to like walk around a little bit around the house because I just was in pain. But it wasn't anything to where I'm like doubled over screaming. It was just kind of that like, oh, why? Like just achy. It felt like how I felt the first like 8 weeks of pregnancy, kind of like you have the flu, like you're just really achy. And so that was that. Then I woke up around 7 a.m. for the day, and I had really bad like cramps underneath my belly. It was a weird spot right under where my belly sat. And I literally am sitting there eating breakfast in tears. I could barely eat because I was like, I am just so uncomfortable. My back hurts so bad. The back was like a constant ache. The under the belly pain would like come and go. So I was like, Trevor, are you fine before you leave for work? Like, can I just call the health line this 24/7 just to like be okay that everything's fine? Like if I need to get in or something, I don't know. She asked me a series of questions and she ended the call and said, you know, the back pain is what makes me kind of nervous. I would go to the ER. And I walked down the stairs just in tears at this point, because when I don't feel well, I cry. It doesn't matter how like intense the pain or whatever I'm feeling is. If I don't feel good, I just get really emotional. And so I was crying to Trevor and I was like, the nurse said I need to go to ER. And he was like, okay, let's go. So at this point we scrambled to try to find somebody. I was like, I would really like you there with me. And I like, it's last minute, we want to go, so spare you of every single detail, but we were able to last minute get somewhere for the kids to go so Trevor could come with me to the ER, which was awesome. But because it was kind of a last minute thing, we were already on the way to the hospital, we didn't pack anything for the kids. They were in their pajamas. Their diapers were changed, but I had a couple snacks but I had no diapers. I had no diaper bag. I had nothing for them. They had the clothes that were on their body, which were still pajamas. And, that was it. But I was really, really gracious so thankful for the lady at our church who was able to take the kids. And Trevor came with me to the ER. And it's one of those weird things where you're like, do I try to like make conversation about other things? Do we sit in silence? Do I the drive was just kind of that awkward, whatever. I started getting more and more worried as the drive went on because the pain underneath my belly started becoming more consistent and it started feeling like contractions. Now, when I was on the phone with the nurse on the health line, she asked, does it feel like labor? Like, is this your first kid? And I was like, no, I have 2 children. And she was like, does it feel like labor? And I was like, no, it doesn't. Well, after she asked that question, it almost started making me think like, is my body going into labor? Because before that, you don't think that's going to happen because you're 17 weeks along. Like up until like 35 weeks, you don't even think about, am I in labor? Because it's not normal or natural or wouldn't even be good to go into labor. And so I started thinking more and more. I was like, Trevor, this is starting to feel like contractions. And that started to really scare me that I was losing the baby. Now, rewind 2 or 3 nights prior, I actually had a dream. I woke up, it was a good dream, but I woke up and told Trevor and was like, it's really weird. I had a dream that we were in the hospital and I had the baby. I was like, but a baby wouldn't be able to live outside the womb at this point. Like, it was a good and happy dream. I don't remember gender, but I was like, we had our baby and it was really happy. But I was like, that's really weird that I dreamt that. Completely slipped my mind. Thursday, that dream hit me again. And I went into the ER. So back to, this random Thursday that I'm 17 weeks along. Went into the ER, realized soon that we went to the wrong hospital's ER. Our hospital is 3 or 4 blocks down the road from this hospital, and we had never been to the ER. We are newish to the area. We're under a year here, and we had never been to the ER. And little did we know, we showed up at the wrong one. So it took a lot more paperwork and a lot more asking me questions, getting my ID and everything. And it just took longer. They see me in the triage room and then I go back to the waiting room and we just wait. There was one other older lady there and she at one point said, are you having contractions? And I in tears was like, I don't know. And she said, when are you due? And I said, not until May. And she said, everything's gonna be okay. And that was really sweet of her because in that moment, I had no clue what was going to happen. And I had no clue what the following weeks and days and minutes would happen. I do have to say, though, that God really showed up in the situation. He was there every single second. And I just don't ever want to miss highlighting what God did. Because even if something happens that you don't want or don't desire or isn't good, it does not mean that God caused it. He does not cause pain. And he showed up in that ER room that day. So we waited about 12, 15-ish minutes. It went really slow. And I was timing at that point if they asked me, and I had what felt like a contraction. It also kind of felt like an ulcer, like bursting, because I had that like years ago. And I thought, you know, I'm just going to stay positive. It's just going to be this ulcer. It feels really similar to when I had an ulcer on my, where was the ulcer? I don't even remember. I don't know. But it felt really similar to that, like a bursting, stinging sensation that would come and go. And so I was like, you know, it's probably just that. I'm going to try to stay really hopeful. Well, we went back in, and right away the guy nurse had me go take a urine sample just to get that out of the way. He knew that they would want that. And then so many nurses and doctors were in and out of the room taking my blood pressure, asking me questions, getting stuff on file that, you know, I didn't have because we went to the wrong hospital, and all of that kind of stuff. And now things are a little bit fuzzy, so this might like not be fully in chronological order of how it actually happened. So basically I'm in a gown on a table, and at this point Trevor and I aren't like saying a lot because it was kind of like, I don't know what's happening. This pain keeps coming and then going. I don't know. And then at one point I had a gush happen, and I was like, oh, what's going on? I felt a pop, and that moment was my water breaking. I got really scared at this point. I wasn't trying to focus on what was maybe happening or anything negative, but it was like hard not to like think about that and like what could be happening. But at that point my water broke. They were wanting, but like they didn't really know. It was just kind of like bloody, but not super bloody, like blood tinged liquid. And so at that point was like, let's do like a pelvic exam. So this nurse comes in, and we're just in ER, so she's not necessarily like an OB nurse, but she comes in to do an exam down there. Any ladies over 21 is going to know what I mean by that. And she tried, and I could feel that she was trying to do it and then stopped and then tried again. And at this point, she looks at me and she says, the umbilical cord is right there. The baby is not viable. Basically telling me your baby is coming out and you are miscarrying your baby. That was the last thing that I thought I was gonna experience going into that hospital that day, was delivering my 17-week-old baby. Not soon after, I kind of like yelled and screamed and was like, Trevor, something is coming out, something is coming out. And he calls for the nurse, and our baby was coming out. And at this point, Trevor and I are in shock, crying. I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. I'm only 17 weeks along, and I'm trying to grasp the fact that at 12 weeks, my doctor looked me in the eye when I was spotting, and she said, Tia, the baby's heart rate is so strong that it would be rare if you miscarried. I held on to those words, those days that I was struggling with the bleeding, the hemorrhage, the spotting. I held on to those words that my doctor said it would be rare if you miscarried. And here I was at 17 weeks along, losing our baby. And I've had one other miscarriage. Our very first baby was at 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks, very, very early on. Most miscarriages, because 1 in 4 pregnancies are miscarriages, but most are within those first 12 weeks. And so once you hit 12 weeks, and then 13 and 14 and 15, 16, 17, the last thing on your mind is that the baby is just not gonna make it. And so I birthed the baby birthed the placenta. And at that point, the grieving has started. We spent the next couple of days in the hospital. I got an infection post-delivery. Hold on. I got an infection that spiked my fever up to 101. I all of a sudden was like shaking in bed. They had given me some meds between birthing the baby and birthing the placenta that had kicked in, so I wasn't feeling a ton of pain at this point. But all I have to say is, you know, everybody talks about what you deal with postpartum after birthing your baby, but no one is talking about what it's like to experience all the postpartum, the bleeding, the milk coming in, the cramping, the wearing the huge diapers, the IV, the dealing with an infection. I had an IV in for about 25 hours. One got infiltrated, and so I got this huge bump and swollen arm. I have bruises everywhere. Had to be in the hospital for 2 days. No one talks about what it's like to experience those things and not have the baby there. It's awful. You're sitting there in a labor and delivery room, which the room was very beautiful. By the way, I walked in or got wheeled in, whatever, and was like, this is a very nice room. But no one talks about what it's like to be in a labor delivery room and have empty arms. I am sitting there grieving. Every nurse and every doctor is asking me how I'm doing and sending their condolences. And even though that's so kind, it just broke me every single time someone said something to me. Because I'm, 1 to 2 days fresh of all of this happening just on a random Thursday at 17 weeks along. And I just was completely broken. We were just frustrated. I just wanted to scream from the mountaintops, this sucks so much. My infection, I had to get a CT scan so they could kind of narrow out where it's coming from. They were giving me antibiotics. We were able to get out after like a day and a half-ish versus 2.5. So we only had to do 1 night there, which was really great because I just wanted to get home. I just want to be able to cry and not have people looking at me and sticking needles in my arms and all of this stuff. My fever had gone down, antibiotics were working, and they think the infection came from my uterus. They said it could have come after delivery and kind of been what my body did after everything happening, but it also could have been the reason we lost the baby too. But there's really no way to know that. And also getting an infection while pregnant is that's not like a common thing because the baby's like protected so much in there. And so we still have a lot of questions. The time of filming this, it has been almost 2 weeks. And yesterday was my first day of not crying. It felt like a step in the right direction, but I'm still hurting. My husband is still hurting. Holding my other 2 kiddos a little bit tighter. And we had a burial for our son. We found out that it was a boy. And his name is Shepherd Lewis. We had this name picked out for over 2 years that we said, if we ever have another boy, this is his name. As of right now, it's the 19th of December. On the 28th was going to be our big anatomy scan where we found out the gender. Or what we were going to do is get the gender in an envelope and go to a really nice restaurant and have the waiter bring out a certain food to us if it was a boy or a girl and find out in a special way together. And we were really, really excited for that. But we were able to find out post-delivery that we got our little Shepherd Lewis. And no one prepares you for what it's like to see your baby for the first time when your baby is this big. versus the normal size. He was almost 5 ounces and he was 7 inches long. And no one prepares you for that moment. Trevor and I ended up seeing him the day that it happened, but in the evening we waited because we just didn't feel ready at first. Everything felt too raw. But no one prepares you for that moment. It was absolutely awful. But also like so beautiful at the same time. As we were sitting in the hospital room, like sitting there waiting for the nurse to bring him in, because it was completely our choice that we didn't want to see him until this moment. But when we were ready, we told her we were ready when we felt like we were, and she brought him in, and he was wrapped in the most beautiful little like white crocheted blanket, and we didn't hold him, we didn't take any photos, but it was our time to talk to him. And I think it kind of helps with the grieving. Trevor, it broke me, but in the most beautiful way. He looks and he goes, "He has your nose." And I was like, Hudson has my nose too. So he would have been another little Hudson running around. He was measuring big like Hudson was, like so many things that were showing that he was a boy to us. And we knew it. We knew so much that he was a boy. And it was a beautiful moment, but it was absolutely heart-wrenching. And we buried him out at my parents' property. And one of the hardest moments since this has happened was the moment of getting wheeled out of the hospital. Now, I kind of jumped ahead. The burial was after we had already been home for a couple of days. But I was getting pushed out of the hospital in a wheelchair, and I was holding Shepherd in a casket on my lap. And I get in the car, Trevor pulls up for me, and he was like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Like, talk to me. And I said, I wasn't prepared for leaving the hospital with a baby in a casket and going into the ER the morning prior. It was the last thing I thought was going to happen. Being wheeled out of a labor and delivery, postpartum, whatever room, just to leave with a casket in your arms is one of the most awful things that could happen. It really, truly does suck. It's awful. I'm still hurting. Being around people has been really tricky. But we're taking it one day at a time. We are focusing on the good. We're squeezing our little ones a little bit harder, a little bit tighter. And I'm sorry for how much of a downer this video is, but I want to leave you with this. God is so good. And I've had a few days where I didn't feel like worshiping. I didn't feel like reading my Bible. And I wasn't mad at God, but I felt really empty, and I felt like I have no emotional capacity for anything. I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like I can talk to God about anything except that this is such a crappy situation that I am in. I don't feel like praising him. I know that he is good. I know that he didn't cause this to happen. I know that he formed Shepherd and knew Shepherd in my womb before I even knew I was pregnant. He knew he was a boy. Like, I know how much he loves him, but I just was having a hard time emotionally getting there. Now, almost 2 weeks out, I'm not 100% there, but I'm trying. And like I said, God showed up in so many ways. If the lady at our church was not able to take our kids for that day, Trevor wasn't going to be in the ER with me that day. And I can just tell you, if I had to lay in that ER table with gushes of, I didn't know what was happening at the moment, and birthing our son by myself, that would have broke me. I don't know how I would have done that. And I know that would have been awful for Trevor, like sending a text to Trevor saying, I just lost the baby, like, and him like having the kids, like, the fact that Trevor was even able to be there was a blessing. I didn't go into a lot of detail about this, but originally the lady that took her kids wasn't able to come right away, and it ended up working out to bring her, like I said, or bring the kids to her, like I said. But originally we were gonna wait like 45 minutes potentially for her to come to our house instead of dropping them at her house. And if we would have waited that time, I would have delivered at home. in the car around my kids, and we went to vet at a hospital, and we would have had to call an ambulance, and I would have had to be brought to the hospital. Like, so many things like that where God was there in how that day formatted. I didn't give birth in the waiting room where that lady told me everything's gonna be okay. Are you having contractions? Like, it's okay. And God showed up and was there for us, and he is still there for us. And if you have gone through this, like, so many people have messaged us that they have gone through something similar, 15 weeks, 16 weeks, 40 weeks, like stillbirths and losing babies farther on. And I didn't know how many women had really had that happen. And if you know of someone, or if you are like, God is still there, don't give up on him. Don't think that he caused your pain, even though you might have moments of feeling absolutely numb to not knowing how you're feeling and just being angry at the situation. Don't be angry at God, because God sees you and he loves you and he knows you, and he does not bring pain. He does not cause loss. And my arms are empty. I don't have a baby inside of me anymore, but I can still say that God is good. And there have been conversations I've had to have with Trevor in the last 2 weeks that I never even had once thought of. We never thought we would be here, but God is good. And my brother Jay died from cancer when I was 15, and he is in heaven, and I know that he is giving Shepherd a really big hug from me. And that's special, and that's comforting. Shepherd is alive, he's well, and I will see him again someday. This sucks. It really does. It's so hard, but we are blessed with a ton of people who love us and care about us and are sending us flowers and care packages and mementos and devotionals and meals and words and cards, and we've been really blessed in that, and people are really surrounding us in a really great way. There are days that are still really challenging, and then there are days I feel like I'm getting better. I'm not physically 100% yet, but I'm getting there. And I have my follow-up appointment tomorrow, at the day of filming this. It will have already happened by the time you're watching this, but just to see how my body is doing. And my heart, I feel like my family is incomplete. I feel like there should be, like, there's a missing piece, and it's Shepherd, and he's not here with us. But God is good, and we will get through this. If you or anyone else that you know has dealt with something similar, I would love to just encourage you and just have positive comments, like, below in the comment section, because we're in this together. But I hope that you guys have a wonderful day. Sorry for the downer, sorry for the tears, but I just hope if you're watching this that you can be encouraged in some way. And that's where I've been. It has not felt normal to post any normal content. I just really have felt completely at a loss for just anything. But day by day, God is still good. And hopefully I can get some normal content coming to you soon. So thanks for watching, guys.